You know that feeling, right? You open your crypto wallet, maybe first thing in the morning, ready to check your holdings, and then you see it, XRP, down, like nearly 10% in a single day. And your first thought is probably, what on earth just happened? Because here's the real puzzle that kicked off our deep dive today. There was just no obvious reason for this sudden plunge. I mean, no catastrophic hack, no big new lawsuit announced, nothing you could immediately point to. It just, it tumbled. So our mission here on the deep dive is to untangle that knot of confusion for you. We're going to dig into what our sources are saying about this surprising mix of regulatory uncertainty, tricky market psychology, and maybe just some good old-fashioned crypto chaos that led to XRP's drop on July 23rd, 2025.
Yeah, and that initial confusion, that what gives feeling, that's precisely what makes this so interesting. It's really counterintuitive, isn't it? Seeing a big move like that without a clear trigger. It's almost like waking up to find your house on fire and everyone's just kind of shrugging and saying, oh, well, maybe it's just a Tuesday thing.
Mm-hmm.
We want to show you why that Tuesday thing is often, well, a lot more complicated than it looks.
Okay, let's get into the hard numbers first, just so you can really see the scale here. On July 23rd, 2025, XRP was already down roughly 7% by, 10:53 a.m. Eastern Time. By the time the day wrapped up, around 6:54 p.m., it had sunk a full 9.77%, settled around $3.19. Now look, for some of the wilder meme coins, maybe a 10% drop is just noise. But this is different, right? We're talking XRP, a coin with a massive $188 billion market cap. A near 10% slide like that. That's substantial. It's not something you just shrug off. It definitely gets your attention and makes you wonder what's really going on underneath.
And what's really striking looking at our sources is that lack of a single smoking gun. No massive headlines screaming, "This is why XRP crashed."
Yeah.
That's what confused so many people initially, and it's exactly why we need to dig into the, let's say, less obvious factors, the undercurrents.
Right. So before we explore what might have contributed, let's just quickly clear the air on some common fears. Because when you see a drop like that, your mind immediately jumps to the worst stuff, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But our research confirms no new SEC lawsuit against Ripple. Not yet, anyway. Ripple Labs isn't filing for bankruptcy. No major exchange suddenly delisted XRP. There wasn't a hack. And no, Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple's CEO, didn't go on some crazy Twitter rant. He's actually been pretty quiet.
And ruling those things out is really important. It tells us straight away this wasn't some kind of, structural failure, not a death knell for XRP. It wasn't a fundamental issue or some disaster that completely changes the long-term picture for the asset. Like one source cleverly put it, it was more like just a very moody Tuesday for anyone holding XRP.
Okay, so with those big, scary possibilities off the table, our deep dive starts pointing towards something a bit more subtle. There was a piece of actual news that might have played a part, even though it wasn't directly about XRP itself. It involved the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. They appeared to grant what looked like accelerated approval for Bitwise's crypto index fund to become a spot ETF, an exchange-traded fund. But then, almost instantly, the SEC seemed to walk it back. That approval got pulled or paused or delayed. Honestly, the language was a bit fuzzy. It was just this super quick reversal that left a lot of people in the market scratching their heads. Kind of like that high school ex who changes their mind after you've already bought the concert tickets. You're just left wondering what just happened.
Well, Eric Bolchunas over at Bloomberg, he's their senior ETF analyst, he had a pretty interesting theory on this. He suggested the SEC might be trying to get sort of generic listing standards in place for all crypto ETFs before they approve any more. Basically, let's set the rules properly before we open the floodgates. That seems to be the thinking. But for the market, our sources make it clear, this didn't feel like just a little detour. It felt like another roadblock. It left investors feeling like Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and Lucy yanking it away again. That feeling.
Okay, I get how an SEC stumble like that can ripple through the whole crypto market, create some uncertainty. But Bitwise isn't XRP. So help us connect the dots for the listener. According to our sources, what's the exact link? How does this specific Bitwise delay translate into XRP taking a hit? Is it all just psychology, or is there something more concrete?
That's a great question. And it really boils down to these two crucial ideas, perception and precedent. Spot crypto ETFs, generally speaking, are seen as this major gateway, a path to broader legitimacy for the entire crypto space. Just think back to the Bitcoin spot ETF approval earlier this year. When that finally happened, it genuinely did open the floodgates. You started seeing real institutional money, huge pension funds, hedge funds finding a regulated way into crypto. So imagine a spot XRP ETF getting approved, that would be massive, absolutely huge. It would pump serious liquidity into XRP. It would strongly validate Ripple's actual use cases, especially the cross-border payment stuff. And it would definitely attract a whole different type of investor, the kind who maybe stays away from crypto exchanges but trusts an ETF structure.
Right, that makes total sense. So when the SEC kind of fumbled the ball with Bitwise, even though it wasn't directly about XRP, it sent this message, almost like a chill through the market. Hey, don't get too comfortable just yet. Even with XRP's own ETF approval odds looking pretty good, they're still sitting around 85% on Polymarket, which is, that prediction market, where people bet on outcomes, giving us a sort of crowdsourced odds reading, even with those high odds.
Yeah.
Yesterday's regulatory hiccup felt like someone just threw ice water on a sleeping trader. It just created this cloud of doubt, didn't it?
Definitely. And beyond that regulatory drama, there's another angle our sources point to, a different contributing factor. It comes from Alex Kupskevich. He's the chief market analyst at FX Pro. He offers a, quote, fresh perspective. He talks about observing a short-term calendar cycle in the crypto markets.
A calendar cycle? Okay, that sounds interesting. Maybe a little abstract for some listeners. Do the sources give us any more detail on why these cycles happen? Is it more than just a general mood?
Yeah, they do. What Kupskevich and others highlight is this pattern. Crypto inflows often seem to spike early in the month, maybe driven by optimism, maybe just paychecks hitting accounts, people allocating funds, But as the month wears on, this pattern emerges where investors tend to get, cold feet. They start trimming positions. And the source specifically notes late July, peak caution. Now, this isn't just a vague feeling. It suggests maybe the smarter money is anticipating retail getting tired or just a lack of fresh news later in the month. It implies the market starts trading more on these technicals, these behavioral habits, rather than just reacting to fundamental news, which leads to what gets called the vibes-based part of the crypto cycle, where collective sentiment just takes over.
And it's really important to remind everyone listening, XRP isn't just some flash-in-the-pan coin. It has real established uses. It's the native token for the Ripple payment protocol, which is designed to, fundamentally change how money moves across borders. The whole idea is slashing costs and settlement times dramatically. And Ripple, the company, they've been busy, forging new partnerships, exploring uses for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and of course, famously fighting the SEC in what honestly feels like the Game of Thrones of crypto lawsuits. They even scored that big partial victory back in 2023, remember, when the judge ruled XRP wasn't always a security. That was significant.
Exactly. So if the fundamentals for XRP are arguably strong, as you just laid out, and we've ruled out those major disaster scenarios, then what's really behind these sudden drops? Our deep dive keeps pointing back to something less tangible, but maybe even more powerful in crypto. It's not about fundamental weakness. It's about confidence. And confidence in the crypto space, it's a pretty brittle thing, almost like trying to store an NFT on an old floppy disk. Fragile.
That really is the core of it, isn't it?
Right.
Let's be honest. Crypto has always been part logic, part technology, and part something else. And that's something else. It doesn't run on spreadsheets or technical analysis alone. It runs on sentiment, pure feeling sometimes.
So when you pull all these threads together, yesterday's XRP drop looks like a result of several things hitting at once. You had what one source called the SEC's ETF stumbling block. You had that late-month caution Kupskevich talked about, maybe just a general sense of meh washing over the market. You probably had some investors taking profits, especially after XRP touched $3.65 not too long ago. And yeah, probably some traders just overreacting to a bureaucratic pause, like it signals the end times. It highlights this paradox in crypto, which our sources really bring out. A no-news day can still feel like bad news, especially when everyone was maybe hoping for good news, like ETF progress, and instead they get hit with a filing delay.
Ouch. Okay, so that brings us to the big question, the one you're probably asking yourself right now listening to this. Should you buy the XRP dip? Is this an opportunity?
Well, that really, really depends on you, on your own tolerance for risk, and frankly, your willingness to ride out more of these kinds of emotional roller coasters. Because let's be real, there will likely be more. For someone who genuinely believes in Ripple's long-term vision, the technology, the potential for transforming payments, today's lower price might look pretty attractive, a potential gift even. But if you're more of a swing trader looking for shorter-term gains, not really a long-term holder, then maybe the safer bet, according to some analysts, is to wait. Wait for the next clear signal from the SEC hopefully positive news, or at least wait until XRP stops acting, as one source put it. Like a teenager with a broken heart. Let the dust settle.
Yeah, you really have to align it with your own strategy. How much turbulence can you stomach? But for everyone watching this space closely, here's what our sources suggest keeping your eyes on for what happens next. First, obviously, the SEC's next move. Are they going to approve that Bitwise ETF finally, or are we in for more guessing games and delays? Second, watch for news on those generic listing standards. If the SEC really is working on broader rules for crypto ETFs, that could be a major catalyst, or, let's face it, another source of delays. Third, keep an eye on spot XRP ETF progress itself. Despite this dip, those 85% approval odds on Polymarket are still telling us something significant. Don't ignore that. And finally, just watch the broader crypto sentiment. If Bitcoin and Ethereum start to shake off this current funk and recover, XRP might just get pulled back up along with them. The whole market often moves together. So look, the bottom line here seems to be that XRP didn't tank yesterday because of some huge scandal or a shocking revelation about the tech. It sank because, well, crypto traders can be jumpy, the SEC is being vague.
And apparently, late July is kind of the Monday of months in the digital asset world right now.
Yeah, and the key takeaway for you to consider is don't mistake this uncertainty for actual doom. Ripple's underlying tech, still solid. Their vision for changing global payments hasn't changed. And yeah, the ETF confusion definitely knocked the wind out of the market yesterday, no doubt about it. But it's far from the end of the story. Days like this, honestly, they're just part of the cost of admission if you want to play in the crypto casino. It comes with the territory.
Exactly. You're not just buying tokens when you get into crypto. You're buying volatility. You're buying headlines. And yeah, occasionally you're buying some regret. But maybe, just maybe, you're also buying into the future of finance. Just buckle up. This ride definitely isn't over.